Hey, 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 it's so nice to see everyone again. You're on Music and Chat with Shueh-li Ong, and it's a good morning from me to you in sunny Singapore, as you can see through these drapes here. Say hi, please, if you are tuning in the live chat, and let us know where you're tuning in from because we want to know. We want to say hi to you. Give us your first name or any other name you'd like to be known as, and we will say hi, you. If you have any questions for our guests or for me, please put these questions in the live chat as well, and I shall attend to them as the stream moves along. It is past 9:30 a.m. in Singapore, p.m. On the East Coast, so let's get on with the stream. We're here with one of our favorite guests, Philip Nelson, owner of Nalco Comics bookstore, amongst his other enterprises, and our new friend Bob Burden, author and creator of Flaming Carrot, comic series, and more. If you're a fan of the Flaming Carrot, you'll be aware that the series chronicles the further adventures of the strangest man alive. How would one describe the titular lead? Flaming Carrot is an ordinary guy who fights the baddies with sheer luck and bravery. My kind of hero. His costume is a full-length carrot mask with a flame on top, hiding some bizarre and some household objects as weapons. I happen to have a picture, so let me display this, and you can see his hidden weapons. I don't know how he manages to keep all these in such a thin costume. But he's got ordinary items like a yo-yo, a big glove of sorts, plungers, and other fancy things. He's pretty creative, this ordinary superhero. So the series debuted in 1979, which also saw the introduction of his blue-collar superhero group known as MysteryMen or the MysteryMen. MysteryMen appeared alongside Flaming Carrot on the cover of issue 17. And I've got a picky of this cover as well, as you can see, and some of his MysteryMen include the Shoveler, Jackpot, Mr. Furious, Screwball, Captain Attack, Rondo Man, Jumping Jehoshaphat, and Red Rover. In recognition for his work, Bob has won the 1990 Inkpot Award for Outstanding Achievement in Comic Arts, as well as the Will Eisner Comic Industry Award for the Best Single Issue, and this was Gumby's Summer Fun Special. Yes, and I will admit I was a fan of the Gumby Claymation TV series when I was little. At this point, I want to say, please help me welcome our guests, Philip Nelson and Bob Burden.
Hey guys, how's it going? Shelly, thanks for having us.
Hey,
Thanks
Philip.
for having us.
Hey, Philip, Bob, thanks for making this. I am just going to quickly adjust you into the frame. I see a need to do that so we can see all your smiling faces. Here we go. Bob,
You know, I do have to add something. The chat has already gotten lively. We apparently have a Flaming Carrot fan because Jason Flintstone Colors responded with "ut," which is something Flaming Carrot occasionally
that's
says.
right.
So it's nice to see an "ut" in the chat.
That's right. Thanks, Philip, for alerting us to this fan. Hi, Jason. So nice to see you. And let us know where you're tuning in from, please. And again, if you have any questions for Bob or Philip or for me, please put them in the live chat, and I shall select a few fun ones and respond to them. Bob, if I may say so, you're looking great. We'd like to see the rest of your face, though. I think your camera has kind of slipped up a bit, so we're just seeing more of the top of your face. So
There we go.
So if you can adjust it down so we can see the rest of your lower half of your face. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't want to lose you guys again. There you go.
There we go. Excellent. All right, before we begin our Q&A, I'd like to congratulate Philip Nelson on a great ceremonial pitch at the recent New York Mets game held at the Jackie Robinson Stadium. Hurrah!
Yes, I hadn't played baseball since the 6th grade, and they asked me to throw out the first pitch. And what was funny is if you watch ceremonial first pitches, most people just walk out, stand 10 feet, and just kind of toss it. I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to throw a real pitch. And I did the whole wind up and threw it, and I threw a strike in front of 30,000, 40,000 people, and it was quite an experience. So thanks for giving me a shout out for my New York Mets ceremonial pitch.
Yeah, and we need one of these. And one of these.
There you go.
Thanks, Philip, again. And everyone, we know, oh, here we go. We know about the Nerny trick, the Nerny shtick, the Nerny trend fashion that we have continued to hold dear to our hearts since 2020. So Nerny to everybody. Bob, I'm not sure.
So Bob, just to bring you in on the inside joke, Nerny was a term used in computer animation in the early days of visual effects. And a friend of mine, Ron Thornton, who did Babylon 5, when they would add just little things on the ship that meant nothing, they called them Nernies. And one of Shelley's friends turned it into a drinking game. So basically, anytime somebody says Nerny in the chat, I have to drink. So this could be a very interesting interview.
Oh.
So sorry that you all have to be part of these antics.
That's right. Nerny once
Oh yeah,
more.
and Sam Vox did ask in the chat, is the video available on YouTube? It's available on my Facebook page, and I've shared it a lot. So if anybody wants to follow me, it's the Philip Nelson with one L in Philip, and or you can send me a message and I'll send you a link if you want to make fun of me, because it's not that pretty, but it was a strike. That's all that matters.
Philip Nelson, you could put that link in the live chat if you wish, but so
I'm not that fast.
So whenever you feel like doing it, you may do so. So let's move on. Bob Burden. Bob, thanks so much for joining us in Music and Chat. For those unfamiliar with your work, could you please give us a summary of who and or what inspired you to create especially Flaming Carrot and MysteryMen?
Well, the Flaming Carrot first came about one night when I came home about 3 o'clock in the morning, kind of inebriated, and kind of fell asleep with my clothes on. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and I came up with this idea of just something that didn't mean anything. And it was a thing called Flaming Carrot, and I drew a little picture of it and then went back to sleep. And at the time, I was reading a lot of these books about the Golden Age comics, where when they were starting out, they had no, they ran out of all the good names and the good superpowers. So they started making up some really ridiculous ones. There was one called the Finn, who had a 6-foot tall fin on the top of his head. So if he walked in a doorway, he'd have to bend over. And the same thing with the Flaming Carrot. He's got this monstrous thing. So anyways, it was a really ridiculous idea. And the other thing about it that was good was he has no superpowers. He has no secret identity. And that's what a lot of comics are based on, you know, to tell the story. So basically, I was in a position where the book would have to succeed because the story was good. So that's kind of where it all started.
So I understand that you have a background in journalism. You have a degree in journalism. Am I right?
Actually, I do, yeah.
Did that background influence your style of commentary in any way that you brought into your comics creation? Or did you?
You know, I never thought about that, but it probably does. I think that the concept of the inverted pyramid, you know, the stories I'm doing have to start out with some kind of thing that grabs you and pulls you in. You know, like a James Bond movie always starts out with a action scene where he finishes up a previous episode, and you just see the ending of that episode, and then it slowly eases into the latest story. And in my things, I have, you know, just the cover is sort of the big splurge. Like one cover, I had a giant spider with diapers on. And the giant spider's pretty intimidating, but the diapers on kind of brings it down to another level. Another one was, we did one was the comic book for the people who skate and bowl at the same time. And it was a really goofy cover. Everybody's on a skating rink with bowling balls and they're knocking each other over. And it just seemed to me like something that Elvis would have gotten a kick out of, you know, with his Nashville Mafia or Memphis Mafia. Been fun to do.
Were there particular characters or character traits that you had in mind that you felt would work well in a situation like that, or that you've always wanted to express, and this was an opportunity to do so?
Well, I think that the character, the whole idea of MysteryMen and the whole idea of Flaming Carrot was characters that were rough and ready and were not, you know, squeamish or intimidated or polite for that matter. And they were kind of like roughnecks. And I thought that was something that was missing in American literature at the time. Also was missing in comics, because I think that comics, when I first got into it, was a time period when they were not accepted by society, and they were so desperate to get accepted by society that what they did was they really mollycoddled it and kept it, you know, as straight, and actually it became kind of boring. So what we came into comics in the early 80s, comic books were sort of circling the drain. In other words, people were losing interest in them. It was becoming predictable. It was the Marvel Revolution was kind of over with. All the excitement of the early and mid 60s that had been Marvels, right, Philip? I mean, in other words,
yes.
You were, and then all of a sudden, all these weird stories and weird characters came along, where we were basically, it was sort of like the garage band era. It was sort of a new wave. And it was at the same time as the punk rock stuff was coming out, but there was a new wave in cinema, a new wave in music. So the early 80s was kind of a new wave in comics. And there were all these sort of upstart characters that were just having fun and going to town with it and sort of pushing the boundaries again. See, corporations, they kind of homogenize things. Early on, Batman carried a gun, and then all of a sudden they said, no, we can't do that. You know, we don't want to give kids a bad, you know. So I came up with a character that's, you know, sometimes he carries a gun and sometimes he carries a flamethrower or a machine gun. So.
Or a baloney gun. He does have a baloney gun. Nothing stops a drone like a baloney gun. That's a secret weapon against drones.
You know, to some people, they think writing a story narrative is a piece of cake. You know, oh, anyone can do that. But we know that it's not as simple as that, you know, having creativity on demand. So I was just curious, besides, you know, how you kind of frame your stories per se, besides the caption and spoken text and imagery used to tell your stories, how often do you plant Easter eggs in the illustration? And do you make that decision as you go along? So do you improvise, or are they pre-planned? And do you hope that your readers will discover them? Do you kind of picture a particular type of reader who would be able to discover these Easter eggs?
Well, I try to keep my book accessible to pretty much everybody. One of the things about when we worked on the Gumby project, we were able to come out with a story that not only little kids, even toddlers would love. I mean, the colors, the artwork, everything combined together. It was a perfect storm. And all of a sudden we had this book that a little kid would come along and you'd hand it to him. I would hand, free copies to, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids. And they would open up the book and they'd go to ground. They would just sit down and their parents would have to drag them off with one hand while they're reading with the other. And then adults liked it too. In other words, we were able to, and so being able to come up with something that everybody likes. I mean, Peanuts was a cartoon that everybody liked. Whereas The Far Side, that was something everybody liked, except the kids. It was a little advanced for them to really understand the humor of it. So probably half of it was over their head. But as far as the creativity part, that's the interesting thing. Philip can bear me out on this. He's seen me all of a sudden, stop in the middle of everything and have an idea, and I'll take out a tape recorder and put it down. Now, this is the interesting part about creativity.
What's funny is sometimes Bob and I will be mid-conversation, and he just stops talking to me, pulls out the recorder, says something into the recorder, puts it back, and doesn't miss a beat. But, he doesn't let those ideas slip away.
I was going to ask you a
question. One of the things about creativity is it's almost a little bit like dreaming. And the similarity is such that with a tape recorder, you can get the idea down. Whereas, you know how if you're dreaming, you're asleep, and all of a sudden the phone rings and you pick up the phone and you talk to somebody, well, I got to go back to sleep. And you try to get back into that dream, but it's gone. You can remember little pieces of it, but the dream you can't get back to it. It's gone. The pathway is finished. And with the tape recorder, I'm able to get something down while it's still fresh. And also, I think having a tape recorder causes ideas that your mind would not allow into your consciousness if it would not allow it into your consciousness if you have to wake up or pull over or, and so it pushes a lot of stuff out. So the really good stuff, the hardcore stuff, comes down into your brain and you're able to grab it because you have this tape recorder and your brain knows that you can get it right away. It's not going to waste it and throw it at you. And sometimes when I'm doing a story, I'll come up with basically 5 or 10 different ideas and concepts that are going to be really interesting and strong pillars of the story. And then I'll sit down and just start dictating in this. In half an hour, I'll be able to write a whole story.
Wow.
But it'll take me another day or two to fix it and put it together and to pull, it's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. You see what I'm saying? You take all the notes down, and then all of a sudden you say, this sequence belongs, 5 pages previous to this because it's got information that has to be here before the next page and stuff like that.
Do you find that the ideas are constantly flooding your mind? At this stage in your life and experience, it's constantly there, kind of tickling your brain cells, saying, "Put me down in your dictaphone" or whatever it is. And as they flood your mind, you are modifying the substance, and you are thinking, oh, well, this is going to work, and you kind of compartmentalize them. You shelf this one here, and that one goes over there. Even as you're eating and you're speaking and you're breathing and you're shopping or doing whatever you're doing in your daily life.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Do you find that?
See, one of the things about doing creative stuff is it's supposed to be fun. And I'll tell you an interesting concept. And a lot of creative people will agree with this or understand this. When you sit there and you're under pressure, you're under a deadline, or you're trying to impress somebody, you're trying to do the best work you can, it's really coming hard. You're doing it and you're driving with the brakes on and the gas on at the same time. So then all of a sudden you get a phone call. You go into the other room and you sit down and you're talking to somebody for 5 or 10 minutes and you're doodling on a notepad or on the back of a box or something like that. So you're doodling, and all of a sudden you pick up that doodle and you say, boy, that's really good. I wish I could do that all. And sometimes you do your best artwork when you're half distracted, like some people who listen to music. I would highly advise people not to listen to television, because there's something, for a lot of people at least, hypnotic about it that just drains your creative energy. But for me, it's always been something where I have to really train myself to get into that relaxed state of mind where I'm almost halfway between, I'm in the borderlands between consciousness and aware and floating along and dreaming.
Can we tell when
now,
you're...
Philip does music. He writes his own songs and stuff like that. And with a musician, they get an idea for a chord or something like that, and they start, moving into it and playing around with it and stuff like that. But a lot of musicians, one of the things, there's certain things, you could ask me a good question here and you could say, Bob, do you have any musical abilities? And I can't carry a tune in a bucket. I can't, I have a tin ear, as they say. However, I can always tell a hit when I hear it. There's something weird about that. But I mean, like, I'll be the first one. I'll be sitting and I'll say, we'll be driving somewhere. I say, that song's going to be a hit. And then 5 days later, it's, it's climbing the charts and stuff like that. And the other thing is, sometimes I know I have sort of the ability to kind of mess up a song to make it work and make it better. And there's one thing I identified in music that was kind of really an interesting concept. A lot of popular songs have sort of a clown music or circus music in the background, in the chorus or whatever. And like, for instance, that song that what's his name? The guy from what's his name? The guy that would have it wasn't a game show, it was a talent show. What was his name again?
Chuck Barris, The Gong Show?
The Gong Show, right.
The Gong Show.
He wrote a thing about Asbury Park or Cherry Hill Park, and he wrote a song that became a big hit. But it had that goofy clown, in the background, that organ music. House of the Rising Sun has that in the background. And this is sort of a thing that a lot of hit songs that people like have the contrast between the goofy and the serious. And that's something that works musically, but also, strangely enough, it works in a comic book story.
Speaking of understanding what makes people, what draws people to a creative item, be it a song or a comic book, I'm curious, were you self-taught as an artist then, or did you take formal lessons? Because we know that you have a degree in journalism, but did you do art as a minor perhaps?
Oh, no, my minor was in poli-sci. And when I was in school, it was a very political age. There was a lot of stuff going on, politics in campus and riots and the explosion of the hippie movement and all that, crazy stuff. But as far as the journalism goes, I knew how to write a story, and what journalism probably taught me was to pick out the sweet spot or the important point in a story and push it and emphasize it. But as far as learning to draw, I was born with the ability to draw. There's some people that are, I guess, I wouldn't call myself a savant. But I would say that I just had a natural knack for drawing and a love of drawing, an understanding of drawing. And there's some people that have that understanding for music or cinema or visualization or painting or lighting, stuff like that. So I kind of taught myself how to draw. And it was fun because, I would learn from other people. We were competitive. When I first did Flaming Carrot, I came home, and again, this is the first time I came up with the idea, and it was one of those things that was rattling around, but I had 100 different ideas, and I just chose Flaming Carrot because it was the dumbest idea you could come up with for a comic book. And my roommate at the time was working on a story, and he had this page he was working on for day and night for weeks at a time. He was drawing all these little people, and the superhero was standing there on a stage facing this big crowd, and he was just going nuts. And I came home one night, and he'd been working on this one page for weeks, and I'd had a few drinks in me, and I came home about 8, 9 o'clock from happy hour, and I just went, I'll show you how to draw a damn comic book. Hell yeah. And I sat down and I wrote the whole 8-page story, which was a pretty goofy story. And I penciled the whole story and inked 2 pages. And the story was, it had an interesting character in it that was turns out now it's the first LGBTQ, I've got to remember them all in order, character in the history of regular comics, not underground comics, I guess. There was the first character called the Red Dyke, and it came from one night when we were a friend of mine called up and he said, hey, I'm over at this bar that we would usually go to late at night when all the other bars had already closed down and stuff like that, and it was a place where they would have drag shows and there was lesbians and but people go there because you could still drink, and you take a girl there, at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and she'd see guys kissing on each other, and it'd make her, excited too. And next thing you know, she's kissing on you. So anyways, here we were at this, a great place to take a girl at 5 o'clock in the morning. So anyways, what happened was, if you just met her, what happened was my friend calls up and he said, Bob, there's all these women going in there. The parking lot's full, and it was only like 8, 9 o'clock at night. So I said, I'll buzz over there. So I came down there, and it was this thing called the Red Dyke Theater. And it was a communist lesbian troupe that was a musical troupe that was just, having fun, and they were dancing around. And, it was sort of like, that place was sort of like, have you ever seen a movie called, what was that one with Michael York and Liza Minnelli? It was in Germany. They were in 1930s. Anyways, it was before your time. But that's the world that was going on back then. It was kind of a crazy world. And we went down there, and I said, this is fascinating. There's the Red Dyke Theater. So I came up with a character called the Red Dyke.
Oh.
And
now, where was that published, Bob?
Yeah.
What?
Where was that story published?
That was in a book called Visions #1.
Well, I just happen to have it right here. I set you up.
That's it.
There you go. Visions #1, first appearance of Flaming Carrot.
And with a Neil Adams cover.
Neil Adams did this cover for any comic book fans.
So,
I knew you were going to tell. I figured you would tell that story, and I wanted to be ready with some materials. Visions #1, featuring Flaming Carrot.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Visions #1, was that the first appearance of Flaming Carrot or Red Dyke? Which one?
Both.
Oh, all right.
Flaming Carrot battled the Red Dyke. The Red Dyke was the villain in the story.
Ah. I got a curious. This may be a question you've been asked on many occasions, but why a carrot? Why not a celery stick or something like that? A potato? Why?
Some things just work. It's really strange, but in some cases, just the right connection works. Like, for instance, I had a character that was a giant spider with diapers on.
Uh-huh.
And that has a ring to it. Whereas a giant cockroach with diapers on doesn't work, or a giant spider with sneakers on doesn't work. And there was just sort of a magic to it. And actually, I guess it was William Street, the people that do Adult Swim, they decided to swipe that, and they had a giant spider with diapers on. I called them and I said, listen, this is not a genre. This is the same DNA. There's nothing. How would you say? Yeah, in other words, cease and desist. I guess they did.
Was
There's a
that
couple other
Aqua
little
Teen
things.
Hunger Force, Bob?
The what?
Was that show Aqua Teen Hunger Force?
That was it. Yeah. I think it was the Aqua Teen Hunger Force, the soft drink, the meatball, and a box of fries.
Yes.
So
Which was it was, and I enjoyed the series. I thought it was good. It was a lot of fun. And one of my good buddies worked down there, Clay Croker, great guy, and he was a one-man studio. He did the voice. He did the voices of Zorak on Space Ghost, and he did what else did he do? He was an animator. He was a voice actor. You know, he could do everything.
So we've been talking about the way you've stylized the Flaming Carrot and MysteryMen, but more about the Flaming Carrot than MysteryMen. And surreal is the adjective frequently used to describe the Flaming Carrot, which, just for those viewers who are not familiar with when the series came out and the time period more specifically, but it made its debut during the age of new wave and comic books, where self-published comics creators stepped away from mainstream superhero material. Again, for those who are not familiar with the era, I was just curious, of course, Bob, how much of this movement actually impacted your direction, or was it just part of your regular culture by that time?
Can I hype Bob for just a minute?
Sure.
Okay, so when I was 15 years old, I borrowed $5,000 from my dad and started a comic bookstore in the mid '80s. So I was a little kid right in the middle of the new wave of comic books, and that's what excited me about doing the shop when I was 15 years old was Flaming Carrot, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Cerebus the Aardvark, Reed Fleming, the world's toughest milkman. But what was cool about these comics is they were intelligent stories. They were comic books that made you think. They had puns in them. I think they were a thinking man's comic, or in my case, a thinking kid's comic book. And in my opinion, as an outsider, because I wasn't friends with Bob when I was 15, I think Bob Burden is the godfather of the new wave of comic books, because to me, he took the new wave mainstream, where you had, the people would come into my comic shop and buy their Batman, they would buy their X-Men, they would buy their Spider-Man, and they would buy their Flaming Carrot. And they would also buy their Ninja Turtles, but in the early days, a lot of people don't even realize that the Ninja Turtles were definitely not kid friendly. It was a extremely, action packed, over the top fighting comic book. And Flaming Carrot, on the other hand, was truly a thinking person's comic book, because it didn't just give you everything. It didn't assume you were a moron when you read it. And, it wasn't written to a 4th grade reading level. And when you would read it, I would read it one time as a kid and I would get the story. But then when you reread the comic, you start noticing all of Bob's subtleties and the funny little things he would put in. And you asked earlier about Easter eggs.
Yeah.
My opinion is those Easter eggs are more in the story. When you read it again, you start noticing funny little interesting things that you didn't notice the first time you read it. But, that's what I wanted to say was really, in my opinion, Bob is really, to me, the godfather of the new wave the new wave movement, where indie comics truly went mainstream. They weren't underground comics sold in head shops and other things. They were sold in comic shops all over the country, right next to the X-Men, Spider-Man, Batman, the Avengers on our shelves.
Thanks, Philip. So, Bob.
Sorry, Bob, I had to interrupt for just a sec.
Yes.
That's interesting, because that's I don't really get to meet people that were actually selling the comic books that I was putting out that I was foisting upon an unsuspecting public at the time. And he was an enabler for the whole thing.
I
Part
was
of
an
a
enabler.
cabal.
And while y'all talk about this next question, I'm going to grab one more graphic element.
Yeah, please. So,
Sure.
so as the godfather of new wave and comic books, do you still live by the ethos that guided you in your previous work that you still practice in what you do these days? Have you always lived this movement?
Have I always? Okay, rephrase that. Oh, there you go. There's Flaming Carrot number 1. Wow.
Wow.
So
as
that is.
Oh, go on.
That is a interesting book that I came out with years ago. The Oversize, and that had the reappearance of the Red Dyke in it the second time. So it was
just to give you an example. Bob also thinks outside the box when it comes to size. This is a normal comic book compared to Flaming Carrot number 1. This is magical. This is a prized possession.
The problem was it didn't fit in the racks with all the other comic books, so that kind of hurt it a little bit.
Was there,
anyways,
for me, Bob, I have to stop you. Here's how it helped you. It did not fit in the racks with all the other comic books. So at my shop, when I was selling that comic book, I was putting it in a special place on a little stand. So it was actually highlighted more because of the size. Because it wasn't just among the masses of comics. It's like, here's Flaming Carrot number 1. What is that? Greatest comic book ever written. That's what I would tell them.
Was there a reason why you decided not to conform with the market's dimensions, Bob, for that issue?
No, it was, well, actually the reason was my friend Lamar, who was sort of my partner on it early on the publication of it, was putting out the Visions books, which were 8.5 by 11 size. So he figured gang printing it, he would save money by printing it bigger like that. But it was a mistake. We should have really printed it comic book size. It was stupid. But what are you going to do? But you asked me before how things influenced you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And one of the factors was, yes, at that time, there was the whole new wave and punk rock thing going on. And it was kind of a phenomenon. And sort of, I was, right in the middle of all that here locally. Sort of not as a punk with a mohawk per se, but so I was pretty much a visitor there and sort of, involved at different times artistically and stuff like that in the community. Actually appearing on stage once or twice, doing art galleries, that kind of neat stuff. And that attitude of the whole punk thing was affecting the comic books too. It was bouncing back and forth because, I would meet Wendy Williams from the Plasmatics, and she wanted a copy of my comic book. She had to have it, and she'd heard about it or whatever. And ran into her somewhere in Buckhead one night, and different people like that. The first night I ever walked into a punk rock bar was Iggy Pop was playing. And it was like walking into another. I left a, elegant discotheque where everybody had sport coats and stuff like that and ties. And I walked into this place called 688 Club. And it was like, woo, Katie bar the door, it was crazy. And I said, I like this. And I can remember I had 3 different girls I could have gone home with that night. And, I had to sit back and go, what am I going to do? But anyways, I said, I really like this place. It's really cool. So it was kind of dingy and dark and kind of, just a really neat place. But seeing Iggy Pop for the first time and walking in and hearing that music was mind boggling.
So Bob,
I couldn't have picked a better night to walk in on, I guess.
Oh, there you go. So, Bob, I understand that you had some early influences in your artistry and your storytelling, and that was in European art films. Am I correct?
The what films?
European art films.
Oh yeah, definitely. The first, there was probably for me creatively one of the most important light bulb moments in my life was I was staying at my grandmother's house down in Fort Lauderdale, and they had this new um, channel come on that had all the Janus films, all those European art films. And I saw this. I was just flipping the channels, and I see the Seven Samurai, and I go, I was just fascinated by this movie. And all of a sudden, I realized that this was a language that I could speak, the world of artwork. And I was fascinated by it. And that's what I wanted to do, is I wanted to become an artist all of a sudden. And I wanted to be a writer and do creative stuff. And a lot of those films, Ingmar Bergman and Federico Fellini, especially Fellini, and the Nita Rota music, there's an example of the circus music. If you listen to a Fellini movie, or you're watching it and you're listening, and also just look up Nina, Nina. I think it's Rota. He was an Italian composer and a genius, and he did all that weird, goofy, music for the Fellini movies, and it all had that kind of circus quality to it. And all that stuff definitely interested me, just as far as the storytelling and stuff like that. The European films, Closely Watched Trains and Knife and Water by Roman Polanski, and, just these things. It was a whole other world that was different and kind of fascinating, sort of like for the kids nowadays when they get into the manga. And it's different from the American comics. It's different from the American movies. It's just a whole other world of reality, which is kind of fascinating.
Were you also influenced by the way shots were done in the film? Do you kind of prep your visuals accordingly, or do you have your own style or your own method, you think?
Well, in comic books, there are some certain basic rules that you need to adhere to as far as storytelling, and you can innovate on those rules. But there's sort of a way that the way that you position the characters, so it's like a baseball. You throw it over here to first base, and he throws it to second base, and then they throw it down to third base, and that's just the basis for comics. And there are people that can circumvent that and do things with it, just like in film. Like, for instance, the movie Pulp Fiction was a movie that people could follow, but it wasn't really what you would call a normal linear story. And to some extent, that's kind of what I was doing with Flaming Carrot. It looked like a story at first glance, but when you looked at it more closely, you said, hey, this isn't linear, but hey, you know what? It works.
So during our test session, we're talking about maybe having you do a quick demonstration of your creative process. Are you keen to do that?
Did I do what?
A quick demonstration of your creative process, how the idea comes to mind and how you put that down on paper, or if you use paper at all, I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Basically, a lot of times when I'm drawing stuff and it's not part of a story, I do sort of, and sometimes I do stories that are automatic writing where I just babble on and I make a whole story. And I'm very lucky because I have a gift to be able to do a beginning, middle, and an end. And the ending is the hardest part to come up with, because one of my favorite sayings of my own is, a picture's worth 1,000 words, a good ending's worth 1,000,000. Because the ending is everything has to dovetail into the ending. If it doesn't lead to the ending, throw it away. It'll just confuse people and stuff like that. You can get away with it here and there a little bit, but overall, you have to have the ending. And also, sometimes it's not the ending, it's just the feeling of closure, that things are wrapped up and finished and over with. It's like a song. If you're writing a song, Philip, you've got to, you just don't, boom, cut it off abruptly. I remember Wildman Fischer, which a lot of your musical, he's considered by some people to be the Vincent van Gogh of modern music. That's why I was kind of, but anyways, he has this song called "The Leaves Are Falling," and he goes, "The leaves are falling," and it's the world's shortest song, and that's all there is to it. And it doesn't have a proper ending; it just ends abruptly. But when you're writing a proper song, you're going to have people enjoy. You have to have that feeling where it winds down and it's got closure. And you've got, as you're going through the song, you've got to find that naturally.
One thing I would like to add to that, and it's funny that you mentioned that, Bob, because one thing that you see very common in comic books is they try to string you along to make you buy the next issue. And one of the things I've always loved about Flaming Carrot, from the days I had the comic shop, and even now I'm here in my comic shop. This is Nelco Comics, where you did your album launch. But what I loved about Flaming Carrot is most of the Flaming Carrots were self-contained stories. Is that true, Bob? Because it felt like that to me. Because you could tell somebody, read this issue, they would read it, they would get a really cool, fun story, and then it would have an ending. And then they're like, I got to read the next one, just because they want to see what the next story is, not because Bob manipulated them into buying another comic book. Is that true, Bob, or is that me reading too much into it?
No, when you start out a series, you want to have a complete one-issue story before you ease into storylines. And you want to get into storylines eventually because they make up graphic novels. And it's like saying, you want to do something that's going to make an album in music. You need like 15 to 22 songs for the album. And with a graphic novel, you need at least 80 to 120 pages, and then the sky's the limit after that. But initially, to hook an audience, to get people interested, and plus at the end, even though if you're doing what we call continuity, you still have to have the feeling of closure at the end of every issue.
That's interesting, because you made me think of cliffhangers, and Philip brought that up as well, that some films do a really good cliffhanger where you feel that closure. You go, I'm satiate. My hunger has been fed with this episode, but I really want to know what's coming up. So you go look for the next episode or the next issue if it's a magazine or a comics. But some cliffhangers don't work very well. They leave you empty. And I wonder if there is a secret to creating or writing a good cliffhanger, a good, something that keeps you wanting to read the next story. But you're happy to know that, yes, I believe this helps cover all that has happened so far. Is there a special formula?
That's a good question. I would say that if you have to come up with the feeling of closure, even if you don't have an ending, and the sort of winding down. I've always often explained to people how, and my battery might be running out sometime soon here. I don't know if it's been charging or not. I've got it plugged in now, maybe better. But basically, I explained to people that there is, with a story, there's sort of, a lot of times, it sort of mimics sex. In other words, there's a build-up, there's a teasing amount, and then there's the second act, which is humming, and then you have the climax at the end. And then you have sort of like, for instance, an afterglow where, for instance, with the movie, an example of that would be the movie Aliens, where they kill the alien, then all of a sudden they discover they're on the escape pod, and they discover the aliens on top. One of the aliens is on top of the escape pod, and they got to kill it all over again. So that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. But if you look at nature, nature's all about the cycle, the rise and fall of things. The tide rises, the moon goes in and out, it wanes and gets full again. And basically, literature, one of the things about literature, the yin and yang of literature, is the fact that women, I think, are part of nature, and men basically stand against nature, they control nature, they get destroyed by nature, they harness nature or whatever. And that's a very interesting way to look at life and stuff like that. And the same thing with music, same thing with storytelling. A good story has that rise and fall to it, and and has some kind of rhythm and stuff like that.
Thanks, Bob. Viewers, if you have a question for Bob or Philip or for me, please put it in the live chat. I shall remind you a few more times throughout this live stream, because it is a live stream, so you can simply say, well, how about this? I've always wondered about this, Bob. What do you think? Put it right there in the live chat. I will drag it into our chat screen, and we'll have Bob or Philip or me answer it. So don't be shy, please, is what I'm trying to say. Put it right there in the live chat. There will be a lag for about 30 to 60 seconds, so plonk them in right now, please. Philip.
Yeah, Sam Vox. Shout out to Sam Vox. He says, I love the Dark Horse, Valiant, and Image stuff. So he also liked the next generation after the New Wave, which indie comics, all these indie publishers started popping up after Bob and Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird and Dave Sim and all these guys launched the New Wave, and the Hernandez brothers with Love and Rockets. They were the pioneers of the New Wave, which paved the way for not everything to be Marvel DC. And that's when you had like Dark Horse and Valiant and Image and all these companies popping up, creating new things like Todd McFarlane. A little piece of trivia for anybody watching, and Bob, you can talk about it. I don't want to steal your thunder, but McFarlane was a legend. He did DC for a little while, then he did Marvel, did the Spider-Man issue 300, that series. That was just groundbreaking artwork in the Spider-Man series. And then he leaves Marvel. And a little trivia is after he left Marvel and before he started Image Comics, which was Spawn, was his big comic book, he did a cover for one non-Marvel, non-DC, non-Image. And who wants to guess what it was? He did a Flaming Carrot cover.
That's right.
So that was issue 27, wasn't it, Bob?
Yeah, that was. I called him up and I said, "Listen, I've gotten a little behind here and a little bollock stuff. Can you help me out and do a cover for me? And I'll pay you for it. I didn't pay him much. I think like $300 or something like that." And he did a cover, and man, it was wonderful. I kind of laid it out for him a little bit and sent him sort of my layouts, and boom, he was. That's one of the things about an artist is if you want an artist to draw something and you tell them, you write it out, it's really hard for them to get started. But if you give them something that you just kind of sketch out, they say, "Oh, I can do better than that." Then boom, they go.
I can do better than that.
Yeah, it goes through real easy. One thing we didn't talk about though was what's his name, Wildman Fischer, who was kind of an actual early influence on me.
Okay.
From the early days.
Yes, please, and I will bring up one of the photos you sent me. This one is of you and Wildman Fischer. So if you have your other device, you should be able to see this pop up in the stream in a few seconds. Again, everyone, this is a live stream. unedited, so it takes a few seconds for the actual content from real time to stream time to pop up.
Oh, there it is.
So you should see
Yeah,
it
that was
soon.
basically, I met Wildman Fischer through Bill Mummy and Miguel Ferrer, who were two comic book guys that were working in those days. And Wildman Fischer was a character that was, I heard his song Merry-Go-Round when I was in high school. My friend Frank Matatich brought in this album that was all Zappa and Captain Beefheart and all these crazy songs. And we listened to him in the back of the classroom before the class started. There was a turntable back there, and this was mind-boggling for me. This was probably like what 1967 or something when I was still in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, later on at San Diego, I wound up meeting the amazing Wildman Fischer, and at one point in time, he was truly a genius. Some people consider him to be the Vincent van Gogh of modern music. And he came up with some of the weirdest, most creative stuff, so much so that he started out singing on street corners for a dime a song and the hippie strip, in LA. And that's how he lived. He lived in the bushes and stuff like that. And he lived when I knew him, he lived in these cheap hotel rooms that were like $129 a week and stuff like that. In Skid Row, he lived in Skid Row, and he ate, like hot dogs and slices of pizza and, what happened was it's kind of a tragedy too, because in one way, Frank Zappa said this guy's such a genius. When he ran into him singing on the street, he took his whole band and did a double album backing up Wildman Fischer. So, and to a lot of people, they're really avant-garde musical people. Larry Fisher's kind of up there with Pet Sounds or Iggy Pop or someone like that was very, very innovative and not as commercial, but innovative and, seminal. But he used to come down to San Diego kind of all the time, and we sort of had a long friendship that lasted over probably, 5 or 10 years. Sometimes it's very annoying. And Bill Mummy was kind of also a caretaker of Wildman, but he was kind of like Vincent van Gogh, pretty much penurious and unable to, make a lot of money or see success. Mm-hmm. He was also literally crazy. He was completely insane.
One thing that just for people that are watching that may not be super into the sci-fi geek culture, Bill Mummy was Will Robinson on Lost in Space. And I never knew this, but he had a band called Barnes and Barnes. If you've ever heard the song Fish Heads, roly-poly fish heads. That was Bill Mummy's band. And I was like blown away because I loved Barnes and Barnes. I loved Lost in Space. I never knew it was the same guy. And he was the caretaker of Wildman Fischer?
Yeah, I remember Billy telling me one story where they were driving out to Knott's Berry Farm to do a recording, and Larry was, in his paranoid state, he was sitting there with the scissors in his hands. You're not going to cheat me, are you? And he was like, Larry was like an 8-year-old kid in the body of a 50, 60-year-old man when I knew him, and in his 20s when Frank Zappa picked up on him. And then eventually Larry was somebody that needed to be loved, but he was always testing his relationship with people, and he would figure out a way to, you had to have really thick skin to be around Larry because he's literally feral. He might take a bath once a week or something like that. And he slept in the bushes, and, he was a mess. But, because of his genius, a lot of people put up with him, including me. And I have pretty thick skin as far as things go. I'm not I'm not a tough guy by any means, but, basically, we'd help him out with money and different stuff. And actually, at one point in time, I was trying to get him to do, he came up with a character called Invincible Man. And I said, wow, that is so simple and such a dumb idea that it's brilliant. And that's, you know, the way Larry was. He would come up with songs. He had one song called Monkeys versus Donkeys. And it was a song about a race where monkeys and donkeys are racing each other. And it would go, here come the monkeys, there go the donkeys, they're coming around the corner now. Oh, look at them go. And it was just really a bizarre song. I'll see my monkeys are catching your donkeys, the better will win somehow, like that. And it was this childlike sing-song thing that he was doing. Anyways, he came up with Invincible Man, and then I came up with a character to go with Invincible Man, and it was called Nifty Boy. And nifty was a term that was popular in the 50s and 60s when I was a kid growing up. But we almost sold it. We actually did sell it to Nickelodeon, but then they never did anything with it, you know, just kind of, you know. But he came up. I remember the day he came up to my table. There's a guy there looking at some of my original artwork. And he came up and he butted in like he was going to try. Here I had a live one that was going to buy some artwork. And he comes up and he says, look at this drawing. This is the first drawing ever of Invincible Man. And he says, and the guy's looking at it, and the guy's like, you know, who is this guy? And what is this childlike drawing? And he says, I want $500 for this. And the guy goes, and he goes back to looking at my artwork. And he says, you're not going to buy it for $500? And the guy says, no. It's all right, $5. And he put it down. The guy still wouldn't buy it for $5. I said, well, Larry, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $5 for it. He actually performed one time at the San Diego Comic-Con. And it was a band called Seduction of the Innocent. It's Steve Lealoa, Miguel Ferrer, the guy from Mystery, what was his name, and Billy Mummy. And they were performing, and they were really excited because they were going to be able to play with Wildman Fischer. And they bought him new clothes, and you know, Billy and his wife and Miguel and his girlfriend cleaned him up, and they scrub poured, you know, mouthwash down his throat, and you know, just scrubbed him up, and really were excited about this. And so they're up there playing, and I'm walking through the crowd, and all of a sudden I see Wildman Fischer come along, and I says, Larry, I says, you're not going to get up there and sing? He says, oh, it's a hard business. I've quit show business. I'm done with it. I'm not going to. I said, Billy's really going to be disappointed. He really wants to play with you. I said, I'll tell you what. If you get up there and sing at least 3 songs, I'll give you $20. He says, really? And I pulled out the $20 and I waved it there in front of him. He grabbed it and snatched it like it was, you know, it was going to be gone in 3 seconds if he didn't grab it, and strutted up there in his robot walk up on stage. And the next song, boom, he got up there and he gave 3 songs, and all of a sudden the whole audience, I could tell, was coming alive. There was something magical, and he sang My Sweet Little Kathy and Merry Go Round, and I forget what, maybe Monkeys versus Donkeys, and the whole crowd just suddenly came alive, and they started dancing, and it was like nothing they'd ever heard before. Not that the band, you know, before that, I mean, the band, they were all playing together and everything, but there was a certain magic that was undescribable and mysterious that, and 95% of the people in the audience had no idea who the hell Wildman Fischer was. So anyways, that's.
I've got to interject.
Everyone wanted to know about Wildman Fischer.
If you go to YouTube and you search for Flaming Carrot, Wildman Fischer, Wildman Fischer did a song called "The Flaming Carrot."
I think I'm losing the sound, guys. My battery's dying.
So look up "Flaming Carrot" by Wildman Fischer, and you will get a really interesting rendition of who the Flaming Carrot is. It's
10:42, so we still got a little
ways to go.
You guys might have to wing it because can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Talk a little louder.
Okay, I will. So let's move on to Philip while Bob makes sure that he's still going to be in contact with us for a little longer. Philip, how did you meet Bob? Give us an idea in one sentence or something. And are you an avid? Well, obviously you're an avid collector of his comics, judging by the copies you've shown us. But how did you first meet Bob?
Well, the way I discovered the Flaming Carrot, when I started this comic shop, I was a 15-year-old kid, and there was another comic shop in Jackson, Mississippi. I was in Monroe, Louisiana. Jackson, Mississippi is an hour and a half east. And this guy named Jack Mallet had a comic shop, and I got to know him, and he would help me. He would mentor me. He was a really good guy. And he was like, dude, please tell me you're selling Flaming Carrot. And I was like, what's Flaming Carrot? And he gave me a copy of this, and I read it, and it blew my mind. And I instantly just started ordering a ton of Flaming Carrot. And so I was always a Flaming Carrot fan. He's a little kid. I was sitting in high school drawing Flaming Carrot on my notebooks. I just thought it was the most genius comic book ever written. And when I was 15, I went to Atlanta to the Atlanta Fantasy Fair, which is now called Dragon Con. And all I wanted to do was meet Bob Burden. And so I went there. I met Todd McFarlane. I met all these other guys. But I got to visit with Bob, and I bought some original art from him. And I told him I'm selling a lot of comics, and I have this comic shop. And I told him the whole story, and he was just super cool and very encouraging. And then fast forward to like 20 years later, I'm in Atlanta hanging out with Bob's letterer. Her name's Roxanne Starr. She would do all the lettering in the Flaming Carrot.
Right, yes.
Yeah, we're just having barbecue, visiting, hanging out, talking. And she calls Bob and says, Bob, you have to have lunch with this guy. And he was like, okay. And so I met Bob for lunch, and we just hit it off. He knew we're both wacky dudes. He's way more creative than me. But, we've been friends for a long time. He's my San Diego Comic-Con wingman, and I'm his. We pretty much go to San Diego together and go for world domination. One of my favorite Bob stories is, I was working on a documentary about geek culture called From the Bridge.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned
that. And we talked about it in San Diego and launched the trailer there. And so I got invited to this really big party at the Comic Book Museum in San Diego. And I'm like, Bob, you're my plus one. He's like, all right, let's go. And I'm on the VIP list. So we show up at the party, and I walk up, and I'm like, hey, Philip Nelson, I'm on the VIP list. I'm like, oh, well, the VIPs get in at 9 o'clock. This part of the party is ultra VIPs. And Bob is like a Jedi master. He goes, ma'am, do you know who we are? And she was like, Philip Nelson plus one. He goes, no, we're the pros from Dover. We're not here for free shrimp and open bar. Somebody put us on the wrong list. And he legit Jedi mind tricked the lady at the ultra VIP check-in. Oh, yes, Mr. Burden. Yes, Mr. Nelson gives us the passes. And I run straight to the free shrimp. And Bob is networking in the room. And it was just amazing. Bob is like he's a master of Jedi mind tricks. But the pros from Dover, what makes it even funnier, it was from the movie MASH. And, Hawkeye, they get called to Japan to go work on a general's daughter. And they storm into the hospital and like, you can't come in. He goes, ma'am, we're the pros from Dover. And they just walk in. So, that's Bob and I have been friends for a while, and we bounce weird ideas off of each other, and it's just really fun. And it's very big bummer that his cell phone has died.
Yeah, I hope he charges up quickly or manages to attach some kind of a charging device so we can get him back on again somehow.
Yeah.
I guess he'll let us know, or he'll just appear when he's ready and able.
He does.
Yeah, okay.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Dude, I like it. Two Sticks, I guess Two Sticks in the chat said, yep, the pros from Dover MASH. And I'm guessing Two Sticks is a drummer.
Yeah, that's
what
our
are the odds?
That's our friend Gary.
Oh, that's Gary. So I'm gonna do an honorary Nerny just for Gary.
Yes, I'll drink my tea.
Cheers to all you crazy friends out there. Gary's 261.
Yeah, and yeah, he does play drums, and he plays it very well too. So, we know that Nelco Comics has a healthy collection of comic books. Obviously, it's a comic book store. Duh. Do you have a?
It is the ultimate comic book store. When I made this place, I'm sitting here in my comic shop. The lights are off in the background, but I actually wanted to build a podcast studio, and I wanted the backdrop to be a comic book store. And so I built this, and it wasn't open to the public. And I would start doing some streams. But you like yours, and yes, your album launch, which was so much fun. And people would call me and they would be like, hey, can I come in and look at comic books? And I'm like, sure, I'll meet you down there. And after 30, 40 people start calling me, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll hire some guys and we'll open the shop to the public. So now it's open to the public. We bring in cool friends like you. When you did your album launch, we had Steve Rude come in and do a live painting workshop, and he's the guy that did Nexus. He's done Superman versus Hulk. He's done all these amazing comic books. We've had Billy Tan, who did X-23, and he did New Avengers and the Secret Invasion. We've had Joe Rubenstein, who is one of my favorite inkers in the comic book history. He did the Wolverine miniseries for Frank Miller. He inked Frank Miller's first Daredevil comic. He's one of the most prolific inkers, but we just bring in cool people. And, my real job is I build TV studios and produce television and all that, which makes me want to apologize to everyone for the color of my camera. My computer's having an issue and I can't adjust the saturation. But, Nelco Comics is more about the passion of comics, doing cool stuff, doing industry or community building and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's where I am tonight. I got my jukebox.
Yeah.
I've got my guitars on the wall. I got my comics on the wall. But I do have a good collection, just for fun. This is a random box that was sitting here on the table. So we've got Avengers number 5, Avengers number 6, number 7, number 8, which is first appearance of Kang. Number 9. I mean, I've got really good stuff. Spider-Man number 1, Hulk number 1, Fantastic Four number 1.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. I'm out of control is basically the problem.
Well, I have a question about collecting. As a collector,
Yeah.
why has collecting pop culture become so popular? Why do people want a slice of historical pop culture in the form of comic books?
It depends on the era. But my view is, back in the early days of comic books, they weren't a collectible.
Mm.
They were a periodical in a way.
Mm-hmm.
A new one came out every month. They made money selling new comic books,
mm-hmm.
kind of like baseball cards. The reason the old baseball cards are worth money and the reason the old comic books are worth money is because as a little kid, you would buy it.
Mm-hmm.
You would read it 500 times. You'd roll it up, stick it in your pocket, ride your bike to your friend's house. They would read it 500 times, and they all got trashed.
Mm.
So now all these people have grown up, and it's a slice of their childhood, or in a lot of cases, it's something they wanted in their childhood, but they didn't get because you didn't have the internet. You couldn't go on eBay and buy anything on the planet. So the only chance you had of getting one of these is finding it, having a friend that had it, or going on vacation with your family and finding it in another city, or doing mail order. And so I think it's that nostalgia is really what powers collecting. It's about capturing a part of your childhood and completing something from your childhood. Because sometimes as a little kid, I would go to the newsstand to buy a comic book and it was sold out. And I didn't get it. And you couldn't go on eBay, you couldn't go on Amazon and order this stuff. So you just missed it. You missed a piece of this story or this puzzle. And so now that we grow up and we have jobs and we make a living, it's like, I need that thing I didn't have as a kid,
Kind of
and that's really what I focus on here at Nelco Comics is helping people complete those childhood collections.
So yeah, I see what you're saying. This generation, that is now a bit more affluent because they're earning a wage and they are they have their own homes, they say, well, you know, the pop culture that existed during my youth is now available to me because I have money to spend. I can go to concerts, I can buy CDs, I can buy comics, I can buy my Lego sets that I never had, and now I can have them, my train sets, so on and so forth. So I'm going to jump to a question about the digital community, then the digital generation. We have not experienced this hard copy version of the lives that the older generations have experienced. So will the idea of a collector kind of vanish, at least of hard copies? Will this happen?
I think we have there's a couple of different views. I have 4 kids. I have a litter of children. You've met them all. They are younger. They don't like to have stuff. They watch things and they move on. I come from a generation where you would own it or you would own a license to it.
Yeah.
And you had it and it was physical. And you have a lot of kids that don't want to own houses. They don't want to own cars. They just want to kind of experience things and then move on. And so, there is a little bit of fear in the collectibles market that, it's like when I was a kid, people still liked Western comics and they still liked, the romance comics. And there are all these things that nobody cares about anymore. Romance is making a comeback. Horror is making a comeback. But, you never know what some kid's going to really get excited about. If you look at in the collectibles in general, like records, vinyl, nobody wants to buy a song on they just buy a Spotify account or have an Amazon or Apple Music account and they consume. And so this generation is a lot of consumption and not a lot of ownership. This is my personal opinion. But an anomaly is records. If an artist today, you see records are $25 for a record, $39 for a record, $45 for a record, and they're selling. And so that nostalgia, I do have a lot of hope that it can come back in any era, in any genre, with any age of kids, if the right people expose them to it,
Yeah.
But like vinyl, I mean, we do sell some vinyl here just because I have a bunch of it. I just bring my records up that I don't want anymore and I stick them up at the front in a box and we sell everything I bring up.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting time in society where you have this, comparison. Gary says his wife hates his record collection.
He did?
I disagree with your wife and I agree with you, Gary.
He's in trouble now.
He's in trouble. He's now going to sleep on the couch tonight because of that record collection. But we go in cycles. People want to own it, then they don't want to own it, then they want to own it. And so like in comics, you have what are called key comics. It's like big things happen. Like that one I showed earlier, first appearance of Kang. Anytime a Marvel movie's coming out and they announce a character, those comics double in price.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of fun. It's like it's a good investing, area depending on how you play it.
Yeah.
But an area, now I'm really geeking out.
Yeah.
The area where I'm really going all in is original comic book art.
Okay. So explain.
You have a comic book, they print 8,000 copies, 50,000 copies, 100,000 copies, and that comic goes up in value.
Yeah.
But when that artist like Bob draws that issue, there is only one in existence. So you buy original art, you have the only one on the planet. And so that's another thing we're doing here at Nelco is we're starting to sell original art. Hold on, because I'm gonna go grab some original art. Give me 30 seconds.
Okay. So for those of you who are considering being a comic book collector, you must be aware of this process that most places go through when they ascertain the value of a comic. I can't think of the word right now, but it's a grading process, and I wanted Philip to talk about this grading process and what it means to your investment if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
interested in collecting comics.
So this comic is a graded book. So they grade it on a scale from 1 to 10. It says 8.5 out of 10. So like they look at it and they look at all they call them spine ticks. You know, when you read a book, it breaks the color.
Yeah.
So you see all these little dings. This one doesn't have any. This is in really good condition. But you look at that. You look at how sharp the corners are. Are there any abrasions, tears? They look at the front and the back. Like you can't see it on the stream, but there's a little ding right up here at the top. And so the higher the grade, it gets insane. Because if you have things that are like 9.8, that is pretty much mint.
Wow.
And so like a comic book that may be worth $5,000, if it's 9.8, it could be worth $50,000.
Wow.
I mean, there's people spending millions of dollars on comic books. $1 million. Like there's $1 million comic books. There's $1 million pieces of original comic art. So what I did is I grabbed this binder. So this is an original page from Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay. Wow.
Okay, that's the original art. The guy took this paper and used his pen and drew it. So these are Sonic. This is Fantastic Four. I'll prop it up on my knee.
Thanks.
So like I'll show you and what's cool is you're the only one on earth that has this. You know, this is Joe Rubenstein artwork, who's the guy that did Wolverine, Secret Avengers. Let's see. This is the cover right here. This one is the cover of Evil Dead 2. This is the cover of the comic book. This one on this side. And then I have some really crazy stuff back here. Like, there's a guy, you talked about manga.
Yeah.
So I was talking to some people at San Diego Comic-Con looking at statistics and things like that.
Yeah.
The #1 genre in America for new book sales is manga.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
They're just, kids are buying it left and right. And there's a guy here in San Antonio named Ben Dunn who created a comic book called Ninja High School.
Okay, wow.
Years ago, and they're on issue 200. He also did a comic book called Warrior Nun, which became a Netflix series.
Oh.
And so I bought some original art from him. Let's see, this is Ben Dunn. Nope, Ben Dunn's up here. Where's Ben Dunn? This is from a comic he did called Tomorrow Girl.
Wow.
And you know that piece of artwork is worth $300. This is from Weird War. Weird War was one of my favorite comics in the 70s. You know, that page is worth $950. But these are two covers from Ben Dunn. One is from Tomorrow Girl, and one is from a series he did called I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, it's just weird. Original comic art, if I were going to invest crazy money, I would buy original art right now.
There you go, collectors. So
yeah, I think we've lost Bob for good.
We might have to bring it back again on another episode.
He's a great storyteller. And if you have not read The Flaming Carrot, I highly recommend you go on eBay right now and order some Flaming Carrot comic books, because to me, it is my favorite comic I've ever read. And for me, you know, as a former Bob, I'm always a Bob Burden fan, but now that we're friends, it's really cool to hear his process.
Yeah.
And if you ever run into Bob at a Comic-Con, just ask him, what is monkey face, baby face?
Okay. There you go, everyone.
Just ask him what is monkey face, baby face, and your mind will be blown.
Okay. We shall prepare ourselves for that. So, Philip, we understand, or at least I heard this on your grapevine, that you started creating a comic of your own based on a deranged car driver.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about it, please, and what led you to conjure up this character.
Okay, so we talked about the new wave of comics.
Yeah.
And we talked about how great the 80s were for music and art and all these new things coming out. in my opinion, the best era of horror movies was also the 80s. You had Jason and Friday the 13th making you scared to go to summer camp. You had Freddy Krueger making you scared to go to sleep. You had Chucky making you scared of your little sister's dolls. You had When a Stranger Calls making you scared to babysit. And I love the 80s because it didn't take itself too seriously. They had a little campiness to it. It was over the top. It was fun, but it was also scary. And so somebody, I think it was Sam Vox, mentioned Babylon 5 earlier.
Yeah, he
Sam,
did.
if you're still with us, I think you mentioned Babylon 5. And there's the reason I'm bringing that up. So I came up with this idea to do a comic book called Axie Cab, which is a little campy. If the T goes out, it says Axie, right? T-A-X-I is Axie.
Yeah.
It's about a deranged cab driver who kills people who gets into his cab.
Nice.
So I was hanging out with Ron Thornton.
Oh, you were?
Ron Thornton, Mr. Nerney, thank you, Gary, who did Babylon 5. And I was telling him about this idea. And he like went crazy. He was like, dude, this is brilliant. You could sell this as a movie with just a movie poster. You know, I love the idea. I want to help you make it. And so Ron and I talked about it for years, but unfortunately Ron passed away. And so Ron was a very dear friend. I love the guy. And so I decided I'm going to do a comic book of Axie Cab.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it as a double feature, kind of in the 1950s EC horror style. And it's it's over the top. It really is over the top. But I'm working with Antarctic Press, and they're going to distribute it this spring. I've got a distribution deal on it. Cool. And I just got artwork tonight of a variant cover we're doing. Nice. Because I'm an 80s pop culture geek. The real cover looks more like an EC style comic book from the 50s, right. But the variant cover, I call it the RoboCop tribute.
Okay.
And it's like, if you remember the RoboCop movie poster where you see the car and he's stepping out of the car. So we did an Axie Cab driver version of RoboCop poster. I just got the artwork today and it's looking fantastic.
Excellent.
But it's going to be distributed by Antarctic Press. Who is that guy I showed you, Ben Dunn, who did Ninja High School and he did Warrior Nun. His comic company is going to be my publisher. Nice. And they're getting it in so that it can take pre-orders for, I think, February or March is when it's coming out.
Well, if you ever make it into a film and you need a theremin player, you know who to call.
I think I have to have a theremin player in this. I need Shueh-li to do something amazing because, you know, the theremin, even though it's, you know, a lot of people, mainstream people think of Star Trek, right?
Oh, horror
but that's
movies.
Late 60s. And but it's like it carried into the 80s.
Yeah, I did.
And it's carrying into now because you're like keeping the theremin in front of people. And it's so cool. So I think we have to have some weird theremin trippy background during one of the murder scenes. And we may just have to call the character Shueh-li.
There you go.
You'll be killed in a movie. Maybe we put you in the movie and you have to be murdered by the Axie Cab driver. I'm coming up with too many ideas tonight.
We'll talk about creativity on demand on another episode. But so how would you describe, so are you writing the stories and you're also doing the illustrations?
No. I'm not that talented.
Are you someone
else? So I created the concept and what I'm working with artists and writers. And so like we just brainstorm it. It's a collaborative process where, you know, I have a vision of what I want to do with it.
So you're not doing any sketches at all for us to collect? You're not doing any sketches at all for us to collect one of these days? That's where it's going to be worth thousands of dollars kind of situation?
I wish I'm terrible at drawing. And I used to draw, but I just don't have time. Yeah. And it is a skill. You know, drawing is like a muscle. Yeah. Some people can just draw. I would have to really practice and get good again because I used to be a good artist, but I'm not anymore because I focus on video stuff and all that. And so I, I'm not drawing anything now. I tell, I like the artists I'm working with. I tell them my ideas, I tell them my vision, kind of, and we brainstorm concepts, and I'm like, yes, let's go with this. And we tweak and we do revisions, and we get it to where I'm happy and the artist or writer is happy, because I want everybody to be proud of it. And so it's true collaboration is the way we're pulling it off. But what's really cool about AxiCab is one of my clients and a friend is Chris Angel, the magician. If you ever seen Mind Freak, his video producer or his editor, Peter Leverman, I was hanging out, with those guys, and I showed him AxiCab, and he's like, dude, we got to do a movie. I'm like, well, that was the original plan. I said, let me get 3 issues out so we have a good story arc, and then we have storyboards for a movie. That's kind of the concept.
Cool. So I had a question about superheroes, the idea of superheroes, why it's remains such a popular subject matter. Or I know, ex-murderers as well, but superheroes tend to take up the bulk of the list of characters in comic books that people love to love. What is it about superheroes, you think?
Well, we talked about people going through cycles of collecting and not collecting. In superheroes that happens too. Like in the 1950s, superheroes weren't cool anymore. In comic books, everybody was buying Western comic books, crime comic books, romance comic books, funny animal comic books like Daffy Duck and Mickey Mouse, and nobody cared about superheroes until a comic book, Showcase Comics, debuted the first Silver Age era Flash, and they changed the story because in the 50s and below and before, the superheroes were more like mythological origins. Shazam, is Zeus and all these people, and it was like mythological characters and things like that. And so in the 1950s, when DC Comics and Showcase Comics was the comic book that Flash was debuted in the new way, he was a nerdy guy who was working in his lab with chemicals and was struck by lightning, and some chemical reaction happened, and it made him really fast. And so for the first time, little kids could read this and think, this could happen to me. And then you had Flash develop into the Justice League, which was multiple characters, and they also started developing more complex villains, villains with good stories, and the cognitive dissonance of why I'm, this villain is like doing what he does. So they started making it more realistic, which it's not realistic at all. Flash can run around the earth in 2 seconds, but it made it so that it was more plausible to the kids and to adults, and it became more fun. So you had DC launch Flash and Showcase, then they create Justice League and all these other characters, and then Marvel Comics comes out with Fantastic Four. And once again, it's a really smart guy. It's a really good, strong. Ben Grimm was just a rock solid guy who had your back. And you had Johnny Storm, who was a fiery personality. And then they go into space and they're hit with cosmic rays. And this was right in the atomic age where everybody was, really geeking out about space and could we ever go to the moon? Hey, Bob's back.
He's back.
And and could we go to the moon? And then the Fantastic Four appears on the scene, and they're struck by cosmic rays, and now they have these powers. And then the last thing I'll say is you have Peter Parker, a nerdy high school kid who's hit by a radioactive spider who gives him these powers. So that really kind of jump started what they call the Silver Age of comic books. And in fact, Bob and I were on a panel together with the guy who helps me run the comic shop, Bill Field, at San Diego Comic-Con, and it was how Flash saved comic books. And Bob is a comic historian as well. Not only is he a creator, but the guy knows more details of comic books than anybody I've ever met. So now that we have Bob back, we'll Sam Vox says we need this as a show. So he's, dude, what is this hand?
It is a flaming carrot hand.
It's a big hand for the show.
A big
So
hand.
I bought this at a garage sale a couple of weeks ago, and
That's
I just
funny.
sitting here, and I figured I'd,
pop it in the
Dude,
frame.
I would not leave that at a garage sale either, Bob. I would have bought that hand.
Yeah.
So
I remember many years ago, I was at a garage sale, and I bought this giant. It was about 3 feet long. It was a spoon and a fork made out of wood.
Okay.
And women would buy them back in the 70s and 80s and hang them on the wall in their kitchen as a decorative device. And these were like 50 cents each, so I couldn't resist it. So I bought them.
Okay.
And I can remember I walked into a place it was down there on 14th Street. I can't remember the name of the place now, but I walked in there and they served food there. And it was about 1:30, 2 o'clock at night. And I stuck the two things in my pants, and I walked in with these giant fork and spoon. I said, I'm hungry. I want to eat something. the whole place was just blown away by it. So
Bob, you know what? When I was at your house, I saw that giant fork and spoon. I didn't know that it had such historical significance.
That was back in the 80s. Another time, I had bought a bunch of stuff that was from an old warehouse, and it was like different toys and stuff like that. And one of the things they had was those wraparound sunglasses like the Silver Thin Man would wear.
Yeah.
Or the guy on Star Trek. And I walked in, I grabbed a handful of them, and I gave them to a couple of the dancers in the club there. And the bartender comes over and says, if you didn't bring enough for everybody. And I says, oh, but I did. And I went out to the car. I had like a big box with like 144 of them, a gross of them.
Whoa.
And I came in, and this was like a Tuesday night. We gave them out to everybody in the club. It was probably 10:30 at night. And whenever somebody would walk in the door, the bartender, the guy at the front desk that was taking the money, had these wraparound sunglasses. And then they'd see a waitress go by with the wraparound sunglasses, and they'd look around, and everybody in the bar had these sunglasses on, and they're all staring at him. And he just kind of freaked out. So
at this point, I want to show more pictures because Bob has kindly sent them to me via email. And the first one is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Flaming Carrot did collaborate with Batman and Robin as well as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm familiar with all of them. I've got a picture of Flaming Carrot with Batman and Robin, the cover that you sent me, Bob.
Well, actually, what that is, it's a very interesting historical piece because what that artwork is it was every year for San Diego for the convention, they would have an anniversary or whatever. It'd be like, 50 years since Wonder Woman was invented, and everybody do a Wonder Woman sketch, a thing, and send up Wonder Woman. And you could do whatever you wanted because it was all in good fun. And one year it was World's Finest, and World's Finest was a comic book where every month Batman and Robin would team up with Superman and would have an adventure.
Okay.
So I did one where it was a picture of Batman standing there, and Superman's flying in from the top corner. And what's his name? Robin is all upset. He says, Superman, come quick. Aliens shot Batman with a ray gun and his head fell off. And his head's lying there on the side by the sidewalk. And Superman's flying in, and he said, geez, everything's gone to hell in a handbasket since we took this new superhero Flaming Carrot in our team. And then Flaming Carrot's out in the back, off in the distance, running out of a Baskin Robbins ice cream store saying, "Hold on, guys, we'll put his head in this tub of soft ice cream and take him to the hospital." And that just was so weird that people, anyways, later on, supposedly from what I heard, that Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld were standing at a dealer's table at the show, and the dealer was showing it to Todd or whatever, and they're looking at it, and everybody's looking at it, and they say, "This is really weird. This is funny." Batman's head, and it's so childlike. It's something a 10-year-old child would come up with. Batman's head gets, falls on the sidewalk, and they're pick up his head and put it in a tub of soft ice cream. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. So they're talking, and Rob says, it's too bad we can't do whatever we want with the superheroes we're working on.
Mm.
And Todd told him, and I've been kind of putting a thing in Todd's ear about, he was talking about leaving Marvel, and he says, maybe there's a way that we can. And that's sort of the beginning, one of the seminal influences of Image Comics.
Wow.
Which later on wound up using my battle plan or my financial plan that I have with Dark Horse. See, when I went with Dark Horse, they didn't have a whole lot of money, and Marvel and DC were both kind of, sniffing around.
Yeah.
And Dark Horse was just 5 guys at the end of a hallway in an office, and they had 4 or 5 titles.
Wow.
And they just lost their best title, which was this thing called Boris the Bear.
Okay.
And what happened was, what's his name? The Dark Horse. I went with Dark Horse, and the plan I came up with was, instead of I don't really need money right now, so instead of you giving me a page rate, I'll package the whole issue and give it to you, and you can mock it up to the printers and solicit for it and take $1,000 off the top. And that way you'll always be in the black. You'll never lose any money. And that's what they did at Image Comics. That was their initial formula for doing comic books, and they would take $1,500 off the top.
I see.
So that plan that I had invented sort of became the formula for Image Comics later on.
Very good. Here's another pic that you sent me. This is of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Should be coming out very soon.
Number 27.
No, this will be the aliens.
Oh no, this is a still.
Can't believe I was able to get my phone working again.
Likewise.
The battery died on it. It's an Apple phone, but it doesn't have a very strong battery. It's kind of there's a lot of other things it doesn't do.
So did you charge it
up again?
I think
they get like $1,200 or $1,400 for one of these phones, but I think it's like really an $89 phone.
Did you charge it up again, or are you connected to power
I'm connected.
Cable? Okay. So would you like to comment on this still?
I can't see it.
Oh.
Hey Shueh-li,
yeah.
read the captions, because Bob knows the panel once you read it.
Okay. Whoops. Sorry, you guys just disappeared.
I'm here.
I'm here with my hand, so.
Hold on. You disappeared from my screen.
I have?
Oh wow, yeah, I see her. We have disappeared from her screen.
Here we go. Sorry. I'm trying to get to oh, I can't do that. Hold on.
I see us back there. So Bob, it's the panel with the a flying saucer on the ground, and then you see Flaming Carrot hiding behind a rock with the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, that's one I was guessing. That was in the, I'll give you a little background on that. That was in a book called Turtle Mania. and turtle stuff is so collectible now that the book that it was published in, there were 1,000 copies of the white edition, and then there were 10 copies of the gold edition. It was called Turtle Mania, and then there was a silver edition that had 100 copies. And the gold edition is now like $50,000 or $60,000 because there was only 10 of them. Each one of those issues had a drawing by either Kevin Eastman or Peter Laird on the back of it. And I got a copy because I did the centerfold for it. And in the centerfold, it shows these aliens landing, and something about spam, I think, or jelly. Anyways, the turtles are saying, so if we put jelly on the aliens, that'll kill them. And Flaming Carrot says, yes, I saw that in a dream. And the other turtle says, well, that's good enough for me. And then over the other third turtle is over there waking up our old friend Cerebus, saying, hey, wake up, little buddy. You know, it's the aliens are, and Cerebus is waking up from his hangover, and he's saying, what is this? Is this the Gilligan's Island crossover? You know, like, in other words, we were doing a lot of crossovers back then, and the idea of doing a crossover with Gilligan's Island was the height of bizarre absurdity. It'd be like crossing over Hill Street Blues with the A-Team or something. It just wouldn't make any sense.
I understand. And I have something from your Gumby issue. Looks like a page from inside the magazine. I guess we'll give it a few seconds before you can see it.
We had a lot of fun making the Gumby comic. It's something that was very successful. I was very happy with the way all the stories turned out. The publisher put together a real interesting team. Good artists, Rick Geary, good colorist.
Hey Bob, you gotta give the audience a little bio of Rick Geary, and that guy is such a legend. But some people may not read National Lampoon or Gumby. So who is Rick Geary?
Rick Geary was a fellow that started doing he did strips for National Lampoon back in the early days, and they were brilliant. They were incredible, wonderful stuff. And then he has this, he sort of draws in a style almost like everything's made out of rubber. It kind of bends and stuff like that. And so he was perfect for Gumby. And now he used to live in San Diego, I think, and now he lives in. One time he was very young back in the hippie days in the early '70s. He was working in a porno bookstore. That was his day job while he was trying to survive as a cartoonist. And so he decided one day to put up a suggestion box, unbeknownst to the boss or anything. And so all of a sudden he started getting all these weird suggestions. And a few years back, he put out a little booklet that had all the suggestions in the, put in this little booklet. And it was very interesting reading. More girl on girl action and less, this, that, and the other, and all this other stuff. So he's a fun guy. And I've been very lucky. One of the guys, having a lot of good friends in the business. The first guy that really kind of helped me out a lot was Jim Steranko, who's truly the godfather of modern comics. And he was probably one of the first people to realize that there was a fandom and started reacting with it way before the corporations, way before the fans themselves realized it. And he did some legendary stuff. He probably only did 20 or 30 comic books. Yeah, there's one of his comics there.
This is an iconic Captain America with Hulk, signed by Steranko. Once again, we talked about graded. That's an 8.0, but he was unbelievable.
Yeah, he was
Nice.
really wonderful, but he was always very, very kind and very, very helpful to anybody. And he, when I back about 1980, when I had only a couple stories out, I was up visiting my parents by the Delaware Water Gap, and I drove down to Reading to talk to them and show them some of the stuff I'd done and get out of the house. And he said, "Yeah, sure, come on down." I went down there, and he was, giving me advice and everything, just taking time out for me. And I thought that was really good. And I always tried to live up to that, helping out young kids and stuff like that.
Do you see any other crossovers in the future? Maybe with characters that you have already created, or maybe you might create new characters? Do you think there is something on the horizon that is new? And also,
Yeah, there's a lot
in
of
the
new stuff.
crossover
I had a
land?
character, actually, is a character that I came up with because when the turtle cartoon was going on, they wanted to, bring Flaming Carrot in, and the producers there said, "Wait a minute, what the hell is this thing?" I said, "Who's going to want to buy a toy of a guy with a carrot head and flippers? It doesn't make any sense." And which was the whole point of the carrot. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I came up with a character called Bold Weevil. Instead of Boll Weevil, he was Bold Weevil, and he wasn't real bright, and he he would hit people too hard sometimes, and their heads would come off and stuff like that. And he was always I know, he was always getting in different trouble and getting yelled at and getting sued and stuff like that. He meant well, but he was overreacting to everything. So, but then they never wound up using that character. But I have a whole book full of characters, believe me.
Bob, I would say, and you don't have to do this, but I think the mullet force would be a fun one to describe.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that hasn't done anything yet. It's waiting to be picked up. But there was a thing called the Mullet Force 6, and it's 6 guys with out-of-style haircuts who've been promised fame, fortune, and free DSL to fight evil. And they have really mediocre powers. Like one of them is a good guesser. That's his superpower. And another one, he can control furniture with his mind. But his weakness is wicker. Wicker just goes everywhere. He can't control it. And another one of the guys has a magic lasso that he bought on eBay. So that's kind of a fun series. And it's sort of, if you really want to envision these guys, who they are, they're basically like the Hanson brothers in that movie Slapshot. I don't know if that's one of there's 2 really good sports movies that actually are comedies that worked out pretty well. They're very similar genre films. But that one with Paul Newman in it, and then Charlie Sheen and a bunch of other really good actors were in one called Major League.
I loved Major League.
Baseball movie.
You know, when I threw, Shelly mentioned me throwing out the first pitch at the Mets game. When I did that post, I had people sending me pictures of Charlie Sheen as Wild Thing, the pitcher. They're like, "Hey, was this you?" I'm like, "No, he's a better pitcher than me."
You know, we talked about how the idea of comics
And
the idea of comics being banned prior to the Silver Age because they were blamed for crime and violence and all that kind of stuff. Do you think as comics creators we kind of bear some responsibility for our work and how it might be accepted or construed or misconstrued?
Well, I think personally, I think that different things, whether it's a song or a movie or a comic book, can affect people in different ways. It can change their life and make them better. It can mess them up, and somebody that's kind of insane to begin with is liable to take something and construe it however they may. And It's just, nothing in life is something. One of the things I'll say on that whole subject, and this is important, is there's a lot of people out there that are just obsessed with blame.
Yeah.
And they can't get their mind around things just happen.
Yeah.
Like in the movie, in the TV series, Lonesome Dove, when somebody dies, Gus has, well, what's done is done, and we just got to pick up and keep moving on. And that there's a lot of people that aren't capable of that. They have to go out there and fester around and find somebody to blame, whether they're guilty or not. And they're obsessed with that.
Yeah.
And the ability to pick up and walk on and to just deal with it and move on is something that they don't really teach you in the movies or the TV shows or anything like that.
Yeah.
There are movies out there that are kind of crazy, like for instance, Burn After Reading. I don't know if you've seen that one. That's it's sort of a grand guignol of all these strange coincidences, and there really isn't a bad guy in there.
Yeah.
But weird stuff happens, and coincidences come together. Or Blood Simple's another one where 4 or 5 people interact, and at the end of the movie, you've seen everything that's happened, but if somebody walked into the scene and tried to figure out why this person was dead and that person was stabbed and how all this happened, they'll never be able to figure it out. And that was the beauty of that movie. So,
Philip.
But yeah, that's something I think that movie, if they can do anything, movies or songs or song lyrics or comic books, is to get people away from that obsession with blame and more on to like moving on with their lives and stuff like that.
Yeah, I hear you. Philip, you have anything to add to that?
So that era you're talking about is like 1954. Dr. Wortham, I think was his name, created a book called Seduction of the Innocent, and went to Congress and said comic books were corrupting our youth and we need to control them. And that's when the comics industry created the Comics Code Authority. And they said certain things were banned from being in comic books. So like the idea was if parents wanted their kids to read comic books and they had this little badge on it, they knew it didn't have zombies, it didn't have undead, it didn't have certain drug use and all this. And you know what's funny? I feel like I'm in an unpopular category on that I feel like the comics code made writers more creative. Because if you wanted to convey a story, and I would be interested to see if Bob agrees or disagrees, but I felt like, no, he's getting up and leaving. I'm just kidding. But like, I felt like during that era, there were some serious topics that were covered in comic books, but the writers had to do it in a way to work around the rules and not just be as gratuitous in how they did it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I feel like maybe, in a lot of situations you have a problem and they swing the pendulum all the way over here instead of finding a happy medium.
Yeah.
And that's probably what happened. But on the flip side, I grew up in the era of the Comics Code Authority. And I thought that, like there was a series in Iron Man where it was called Demon in a Bottle. And the whole series was about Tony Stark's alcoholism. And he basically hits rock bottom, and can't be Iron Man anymore because he's an alcoholic and out of control. And they had to do it in a way that fit within the rules. And then, without, some properties without rules, they are very responsible. And then other people just become gratuitous, and it's not intelligent storytelling. It's just shock value. And I hate to say it, Axicab falls into that category. My comic book is definitely gratuitous and over the top. But I love when storytellers, they have to find creative ways to get around the rules to tell a really powerful story.
Thanks, Philip.
Sorry,
So,
that's my rant for the night. My last rant. I won't rant anymore.
we hadn't touched on Mystery Man much, but for avid Bob Burden fans out there, you know that a movie was made from this group of ordinary but good-hearted group of heroes. And I think the movie was released in 1990. Is that right? Something like that.
1999.
1999.
Long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. And Mystery Man leapt from indie comic to cult movie. How did it feel like seeing your creations on the big screen, Bob?
Well, it was one of those things where I was happy for my parents because they were able to go to the premiere, and a lot of my friends, I was happy for them. I was really on a level where I wasn't taking it in personally.
Yeah.
I was just enjoying it through the eyes of these other people. When I was in line when they had the red carpet going on, one of the reporters, they were interviewing me, and they asked me what my superpower was, or if I had a superpower, what would it be? And I told them, well, I have the superpower to be able to tell the difference between a black and a navy blue sport coat, even in the low light of a closet.
Wow.
And they thought that was kind of, one of the people, the guy with the microphone, was like, kind of, what does that mean? And anybody could do that. And the other person was laughing. They thought it was kind of funny.
Philip, do you have a superpower?
A what?
All right, do you want a funny one, or do you want what I think my real superpower is?
Well, let's have both.
If I had a superpower, if I had to say my superpower,
he stabs people with his hair.
Thank you, Bob. I now have a Bob Burden superpower. I stab people with my hair. Philip Nelson superpower, stabs people with his hair. I'm just gonna go with that one. I think Bob has. I'm going with Bob's. He's ordained me with a superpower.
So Philip, you said you had a funny one, or
no? Well, I'm going with I stab people with my hair as the funny one because I can't top a Bob Burden superpower.
And
I think my real superpower is I really can will things into existence. I'm really good at making things happen. If I set my mind to something, it will happen, and it's almost to a detriment sometimes because I'm like, dude, I need to limit, but I just get passionate about things and I get excited, and I can get in. I can get in any door I need to get in my life. If I'm trying to, it's like, this comic book I'm making, a lot of people make comic books that are okay and they are great and they just can't get in the door. I got a publisher. It's going into the distribution in the spring. So it's just like, be careful what you put me on, because don't ask me to do it if you don't want it to happen.
Wow, that is pretty heavy duty.
You've known me for a while. You know I'm out of control.
Yes, we know Philip Nelson.
Bob too. Bob knows I'm out of control as well.
You run on jet fuel.
I feel like I run at 60%. I'm trying to get to the point where I run at 100%. That's my goal in 2026, is to take it from 60% to 100, and then I'll be unstoppable.
He's the man who proved the earth was flat. And what we need to do is have a picture on for his business card. He could be sitting there with a white coat on and a one of those pointer sticks, and a whole bunch of scientists there you know, sitting watching him, hanging on every word as he proves. If he proves conclusively that the Earth is flat, and they're all nodding and agreeing with him.
Yeah. Challenge accepted.
I will pay to see this happen.
You'll be on my guest list. Don't worry. You don't have to pay.
Oh, I will. Oh, great. Okay, I'll be there.
VIP. You at Ultra VIP. Hey, Bob, while you were off, I told him the Pros from Dover story at San Diego. I told him the San Diego Museum Pros from Dover story. I said Bob has Jedi skills.
On occasion, I've got that. Generally speaking, if you're happy and cheerful about things, and somebody's in a good mood, then you usually can kind of maybe edge something in or pull it off. If the person's in a terrible mood, if they've just, you know, gotten news that they're being audited, or their wife just hit them with a divorce, or they just stepped in, you know, or somebody threw up or something like that, they're not in a good, there's no way, you know, you're gonna be able to work something out with them. It's just they're ironclad. Got to give up, move on.
There you go. I can see how Flaming Carrot has the characteristics and the personality that he has from just talking to Bob and the way he sees life.
One thing we could do is we could have a superhero named Shueh-li that has her theremins, and when she starts working on them, they're magical ones that came from Nikola Tesla, his own personal pair.
Oh.
And when she does them, the people have to dance around, sort of like on Star Trek when they do those goofy dances.
I like that.
Yeah.
That sounds
And that's what and the bad guys are robbing the bank, and she comes in with her theremins, and then, you know, they take the money and they throw it up in the air and they start dancing around.
That's how I do good to mankind.
Yeah.
She's stopping crime with music on a daily basis.
That's a good reason to do it, because I'm practicing at the same time, killing 2 missions with 1 effort.
So, Shueh-li, what do you think of when people came up with a thing called the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Did you think that was odd, or did you just think, oh, that's another strange thing that comes along?
No,
from your perspective as a theremin player, what do theremin players think of some of these odd and strange and offbeat comic books that are coming out?
I've always been eccentric in my own kind of funny way. I like to see life in a more skewed manner, you know. So I think growing up, I don't know about these people if they thought they were my friends in school as in good friends, but I didn't have many. I don't think I was in the inner circle of, you know, popular people, because I always had my own way of looking at life. So I fit in with people like Philip Nelson.
Yes, I made the cut. I made the cut.
Well, you're always welcome at my lunch table when you bring your, you know, tray over and sit down and.
Thanks, Bob. So I thought I really enjoyed the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They've seemed very ordinary to me. Ordinary as in here's a group of, you know, personalities who may not have your regular appearance, but they are hip, they have fun, and they're a group, you know, they are in a group. And they were doing something, they had fun doing what they did, and they seemed to try to do good. And that's how I've always thought I was kind of like. I'm not with the in crowd. I might not appear or have the characteristics of members of an in crowd, but I try to do good with the things I do, and I believe I have a good heart. So yeah, it appeals.
When I was in school, I was very much I wanted to be in with the in crowd, and I could never make it. And then I tried the Pepsi generation, and they wouldn't have me, and I wound up with the Metrocal for Lunch Bunch.
Oh.
You have to look that up. You'd have to Google that, because the Metrocal for Lunch Bunch is before both y'all's time.
Okay, I will Google it. But what was I gonna say? But like Philip, you know, he was saying that whenever he wills something into existence, it happens. A good friend of mine, a musician, once said to me, "You like a visionary. You imagine something and you make it happen." I thought, wow. That's how I've always seen life, you know, because I was never in a group that would help me make things happen, but I really enjoyed seeing the possibilities of things happening. So if nobody else is going to help me make it happen, I guess it's got to be me. And
You've done a good job of it.
Well, thanks. And no task is ever too difficult, because I just find a way to make things happen. So I think that's part of a creative mind. I think the creative community, the ones who are living their creative lives, they make things happen. You know, they see the route or the route to the end goal, and and that's when they meet success. That's when they make things happen. So I'm of the opinion that nothing is impossible, and I don't say this to too many people unless I'm with the right crowd, such as you and Philip, because a lot of people misunderstand what I'm saying. You know, they think I'm just showing off, or I don't get it, or yeah, whatever. So I'm one of those people you call a quiet achiever. As described, I just plan, I plot, I do what is necessary to get to the end goal. And it's fun. It's fun to do it.
So you have a superhero name now. You're the plotter.
The plotter. I am joined the mystery man. There are no women.
Well, that's one of the things we did early on with the Mystery Men. Is at some of the conventions we'd have Mystery Men contests, and people come up with the goofiest things for their own Mystery Men.
Oh, why are there no women in the Mystery group, mystery team?
Well, they're men, but also because
they're men.
They're men.
That's the quote of the night. Why are there no women in the Mystery Men? Because they're men.
Yeah.
Bob Burden.
If they were called the Mystery
That's a quote.
Canadians,
That's a full quote, Bob. That's going on your website.
They wouldn't have. If they were the Mystery Canadians, they wouldn't have anybody from Long Island in their group. But they actually, when they made the movie, they did have they wanted me to come up with a mystery woman, and I had a character that had a special super outfit, like Iron Man.
Yeah.
Only she had got it in a settlement for a divorce with her husband, who was a superhero.
Yeah.
And then what they did was they took that idea and they changed the suit into a bowling ball. Oh. And instead of her getting it from the husband, she got it from her father, who was murdered by one of the people in the movies.
Oh.
I'm down to 20% now, which is good. I still got a few minutes left. But see, also, I recently came up, you know how I do my little tape recording thing? I came up with an idea of what would it be like if there was a town or a state, or if in the whole United States, only women could have superpowers. So women would be running around catching, bad guys, evil men, doing bad things, and have power over them. And they'd be looked up to as heroes and this, that, and the other thing. However, behind the scenes, it would degenerate into cat fights and jealousy and shoes and stuff like that. It's funny because it's very hard to write a story for a female heroine. it just is really tough to do. And it's very rarely, like, for instance, Dark Horse had this character called Barbed Wire, and it was a comic book character, and they got Pamela Anderson to play the character. And I remember telling Dark Horse, I said, listen, men will go see Jean-Claude Van Damme running around in his underwear or whatever and jumping up on the lunch counter or whatever and, punching people with his feet. But women, they won't go see a woman that's prettier than them. Mm. So the guy says, let's go see that Barbed Wire movie. And she goes, I don't think so. And the guy is what you call zipped. He's not going to bring it up again. He's been zipped up and he's, Mm. And so I told him, I says, but they will go see a cat fight. So what you need to do is make the movie about her battling this other woman. Mm. And the best one for that would have been Grace Jones. And I said, if you had Grace Jones battling Pamela Anderson and having a cat fight, and, one thing, then you've got a movie. But they didn't listen to me.
Do you think you're a good psychologist in some way, and your understanding of psychology kind of assists you in crafting your stories, because it helps you're observant of how people function, how they work, how they interact, and it gives you that's a superpower in itself. It gives you an inkling of how your readers might respond to your material better.
That's a good question. I would say this, as far as psychology goes, I have my own theories that will probably someday be earth-shaking as far as psychiatry goes. They'll be up there with, Sigmund Freud and all those characters. But the thing is that people don't realize how much they are robots. And I realized that one day when I was inking and drawing back when I lived in Marietta, and I was there working one afternoon in the middle of the summer, the power was off. So the electricity wasn't working, but I could still see because my drawing table was near the window. Now, when I work with a brush, the minute you take that brush and stop inking with it, you got to run over and swish it around in a jar of water. I would run it over and run water on it in the sink, because a Kolinsky brush, once it gets ink inside the ferrules, it gets sprung, and then you don't get that sharp point anymore that you need to draw with. So I would go in the bathroom when I walked out there, to go into the kitchen or answer the phone, and I would go in there and I'd run the water on it. And when I did, every time I walked in the bathroom, I was turning the light switch on, and I was going out and turning it off. And I said, why am I doing this? I'm an idiot, wasting my energy doing this robot action. And it dawned on me how much of our life, our everyday thing, is muscle memory and robotic action and stuff like that. So I said, I'm going to rebel against that. I'm going to fight that. I'm going to game it. And so then the ability to do things for no reason became really interesting. Now, in one of my stories that I was working on, I was visiting a friend of mine. It was a story about a guy that was crazy, and they let him out of the nut house too soon, and he's selling vacuum cleaners door to door. Oh, wow. And he has all these crazy things happen to him. But at one point in time in the story, he's preparing for a special mission, and he does this, he does that, and one of the things he does is he practices the art of putting a pencil on the floor. He goes over and he places the pencil on the floor. He stands back, and then he picks it up and puts it over here, and he puts it in different places, and which is a bizarre, meaningless thing to do. And I was out in California visiting my friend Nelson, and Nelson was going through his midlife crisis and being torn in two different directions and triangulated fire by life.
Another Nelson.
Yes, Nelson Lyon. And I was visiting with him, and I was explaining to him, well, in this latest story I've got, this guy who used to be a secret agent, but he's getting ready for this big mission, and he's practicing the art of putting a pencil on the floor. And I showed him, observe, and I took the pencil And I walked over to the middle of the living room and I set the pencil down. And I said, now I stand back and I admire my work. And I pick it up and I put it over here. And he says, my God, that's genius. And I said, it is. But you see, I'm doing it right here, showing you how to do it. When you do it all by yourself and there's nobody here, and you put the pencil here, you pick it up, you put it there, and there's silence. And off in the distance, maybe you hear a jet going over or a school bus coming down the street, and it's squeaking springs, okay? And he was just fascinated by this. He thought it was just the most wonderful thing because it took away purpose. It took away meaning. It stripped all that away, and suddenly you're standing completely naked in the real world without any strings. You're not Gulliver anymore with all the strings across you that the Lilliputians have put on you. All of a sudden, you're kind of floating. And I said, when you do that all by yourself, it really gives you this weird rush and a xylophone feeling down the spine. He said, I can't wait to do it. He was very excited about this.
Wow, that was a great storytelling moment, Bob. As you were describing everything, I was picturing this happening in front of me.
Yeah, he lived down on 3rd and Orange. Nelson was an odd character. He's one of my best friends, and he was definitely an odd fellow. He knew a lot. He started out as a writer on Saturday Night Live, and my friend Bill Leibowitz, who ran the Golden Apple, introduced me to him, and he says, right. Bob, you got to meet Nelson over here. He's a nut just like you. And so those are his exact words. And I said, hey, and we started talking. He was over there buying Dick Tracy reprints. And Dick Tracy was a wonderful story. Dick Tracy was nothing, but all the villains were incredible. He had one guy called Mumbles, and you couldn't understand the damn thing he said. And then they had another guy that was Prune Face. He had this face that looked like a prune. And then there was one guy, I remember when I was a kid reading in the strip, there was a guy called the Pouch. And he had a little tiny 25 caliber automatic. And he was so fat that he had rolls of fat. And he had this, a snap put in his neck so he could hide his little 25 caliber pistol inside the snap between the rolls of fat.
Wow.
And so we started talking, Nelson and I started talking about, Dick Tracy and the weird villains. And I said, well, I just created a villain. He's called the Scribbler. When Flaming Carrot captures him, he pulls out a pen and starts writing all over his mask and scribbling all over it because he's stuck in it coming out of a roof and he can't get all the way out. And Flaming Carrot apprehends him. But anyways, I would always visit Nelson every time I came back up to LA after San Diego. And every time it was another strange experience. I'd pick up a book and I'd say, William S. Burroughs. And I'd open it up and it says, to Deadeye Nelson. And I says, you know William S. Burroughs? And he says, yeah. He says, I was out shooting with him in Lawrence, Kansas last week, and I produced his last album and stuff like that. And then another time I came up and I told him, this is kind of a funny story. I don't mean to carry on and monopolize the conversation, but this is worth it. I was in Dallas the week before I did San Diego, and my friends were all in this place called the Star Club, which was like the local Studio 54 type place. And they're already in there, and I had been out with some friends and everything. I said, I'll meet you over there later on. And it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I get there, and all my buddies from Dallas are inside the bar, and they're with this girl that I was kind of interested in. And, I wanted to get in there while she was still fresh and before they, anyways, what happened was I'm standing in line. Now, the lady comes up and down the line with a clipboard, and she's looking at the people, and she's picking out, like Studio 54, the weird looking, the exotic looking, the special people. And of course, she went right by me. I'm just a doofus in a sport coat. It's halfway drunk and my hair's sticking up. And she's like, she goes, I said, Excuse me, ma'am. And I remember I was kind of inebriated. Ma'am, I am VIP. I must get in. You must. My girlfriend, she's in there, and these people, my other friends, they'll get her and they'll molest her and they'll, get her drinks and, get her drunk and give her a roof and all. And she was like, well, who are you? And I said, I am Dino De Laurentiis's grandson. And you have to say it special like that. Of course, I was making this up. I've never met Dino De Laurentiis. And then she goes, well, who's your date? And I go, Geraldine Ferraro. And that was a girl that was running for president at the time. Yeah. And he goes, okay, go on in. So I went in and I walked in the door and there was Grace Jones up on stage. So I'm telling this to Nelson in LA a couple weeks later. And he says, oh, Grace Jones. I used to date her back when I was working at Saturday Night Live. You should have told her you knew me. I was the one who gave her the whole idea of, the flat top and dressing like a man with a sport coat and all this other stuff.
Really?
I said, wow. And then Jake LaMotta, I pick up a book and it's signed to him by Jake LaMotta. And he goes, you knew Jake LaMotta? And he goes, yeah. He says, as a matter of fact, if it hadn't been for me, they would have never made that movie. And he was dating a dancer, a stripper in New York at a strip club. And one day he hears this guy go, hey, Jake, get over here. Get over here, Jake. Hey, LaMotta, get over here. He goes, Jake LaMotta, the fighter? And he went over to him and he says, you're Jake LaMotta. He says, yeah. And he says, listen, I got these buddies of mine. They will make a movie of your life. I read your book. You got to meet these guys. And he says it's a guy named Al Pacino and Marty Scorsese or whatever. He says they just made a movie called what was it called? Dog Day Afternoon. And so they said that Saturday they go to a party with this guy, and Al Pacino walks in. He's drunk on his butt and he falls flat on his face and passes out. So he says, come on over here, meet these guys over here. This is Marty Scorsese and Bobby De Niro. They just made a movie called Mean Streets. They'll make your movie. And he introduced them to it. So anyways, this was my friend Nelson that I used to go drinking
and
with.
And that movie was Raging Bull, wasn't it? And Bob, the movie they made was Raging Bull, right?
Yeah, Raging Bull.
Wow.
Which was a wonderful movie. I mean, it was a hard movie to watch because it was it was kind of painful, but it was raw and real, and it was a beautiful film.
I just realized you have a great voiceover personality as well. Have you ever done voiceover?
No, but sometimes I would do, like when my friends were talking and they were carrying on, I'd get behind them like Philip and I'd do like this and everybody started laughing at him behind his back.
Now I know why people laugh at me, Bob.
Well, you gotta have somebody laugh at your jokes now and then.
I do. I need all the help I can get.
And I know it's gotten late where you are. So I just have a few last questions for you. It's been great fun, though. I do have more things to ask of you, but maybe we should gather together another time. We'll find another occasion. Philip?
This was fun.
I'm in.
Okay, good. Excellent. So
my job is just to fill time when Bob's phone dies. That's my job.
Philip, you did get to talk a bit about your deranged car driver.
I love it. I'm excited. I got a shameless plug in.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, it looks really good. The artwork's wonderful.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to see it. I'll have to see it. So
it's got a lot of energy.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
two things. It's got energy and mayhem.
Okay.
However, there are no platitudes in there. Just energy, mayhem. No platitudes.
I'm using that as a quote in my marketing, Bob. Energy, mayhem, no platitudes. Bob Burden.
But no platitudes. And ... after mayhem.
All right.
Energy and mayhem. ... No platitudes.
I may put that on the cover. Go ahead, Shelly. I'm sorry to interrupt
No,
with my nonsense.
I was just waiting for you to, if you had anything else to say to give you the chance to say so. I'm not one of
I'm
those.
good.
I'm not one of those hosts who interrupts constantly. I give you the platform. It's your time and your space. And the hand goes to.
It'd be funny if it started coming out on. I wanted to see if it'd come out on Philip's side of the screen.
Oh, here's my applause.
So like this, and then all of a sudden, boom! There it is.
There we go.
See, I can use this because I go to a big meeting or something like that, a business meeting with executives.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
wearing a sport coat, and I put this, and I go to shake hands with them, and
Oh.
they'll kind of.
Do you?
When I was doing,
Sorry.
when I did the MysteryMen,
Yeah.
I had this a can of old shoe polish called Shinola,
Yeah.
and at the end of the movie, I had to give something. I wanted to give a gift to Larry Gordon, who produced the movie.
Yeah.
And I took the can of Shinola and I gave it to him with a little card that says, "Listen, next time you're in the meeting with a bunch of these young Turks that don't know shit from Shinola, just pull this out and say, 'There's the Shinola. Now show me the shit.'" So. Okay, my power, I've got 10% left, so I'm
Yeah,
on
I figured.
borrowed time.
I figured we should end it because I know that your phone's on the blink, and we will have you back again. Maybe, yeah, I'll talk to Philip about arranging another. It's been great having the two of you on Music and Chat. I really, really enjoyed myself. And thanks for keeping me awake because, as you know, I'm jet lagged terribly. And here you go, Philip showing off issue 1 again of Flaming Carrot. Here's some applause for the two of you. Yay!
And thanks for having me. It was great. Next time I'll do shadow pictures. I do a really good dove.
Oh, you do?
And a Richard Nixon to die for. So
Okay, I look forward to that.
thanks, Shueh-li.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Philip. I have totally and utterly enjoyed you being on Music and Chat. Please take care till I see you again, and I know I'll see you soon. Viewers, you've been awesome as well. Please like this episode if you've enjoyed it and subscribe so you get notification on future live streams or any other videos I put on my channel. Everyone have a great and safe week, and I'll see you soon. And Bob and Philip, you stay there for another second. I'm going to end this with my outro and then say goodbye properly, but I won't be